I don't think anybody could write an epic poem about, or a novel about a historical figure without having some kind of really personal connection to that person. I have always felt very personally connected to William Bartram. Bartram was a loser as a young man. I mean, like he was called Billy, you know, and he was not. You know, we think of William Bartram, this
He was
sort
kind of
famous.
kind of a weak, kind of seen as sort of like a weak sort of guy.
He
Like
failed at everything he did, like a great many people in history who have later become very well known. But he wanted to do something of value. He desperately wanted to do something of value. He could draw. He was a very good artist, and he loved the natural world because he went with his father on many trips to botanical trips for drawing and collecting specimens, as people did back in those days. The Bartram family was friends of Linnaeus. They knew Linnaeus.
really,
And and so they, in a lot of senses, William Bartram, Billy Bartram, was a young man with a great deal of passion for the written word, for the natural world, for Native Americans, and for the American South. And if I can't identify with that, there's something wrong with me, And I identified, from the very first time I read Bartram nearly 50 years ago, I identified very powerfully with him. And it goes beyond the travels, it goes beyond his words. And people who really love Bartram will talk just exactly like this. They'll start, and you've seen it if you've been working on, they'll get really excited, they'll get teary, they'll just, they really, really want to talk about William Bartram. Well, talking about William Bartram was what I realized that I could do with this poem. And so, starting it was a tremendous thrill. Finishing it was a total nightmare because I didn't want it to end. I kept not ending it. And finally I said, oh, to hell with this. I've got to, say this is the end of it. So I finally, after having gone through it thousands of times, I looked at every single word in this poem dozens and dozens and dozens of times to make sure it was the word I wanted.
right.
And it has a very complicated rhyme pattern as well. So it's something that was a difficult book to write, but it was never less than a joy. And I would hope that people would get that. And I would hope that it would, in the end, I think every writer, artistic writer, literary writer, let's say, hopes that she or he will leave something that will, at least some small part that will last of what they do in their lifetime. But, nothing that I do is important or will last as long as what William Bartram did. And he never knew it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, people do great work and you never know it until the people are gone for decades or a century. So the lesson from all that is do your best, don't ever quit, and hope that if you don't see your name in glory when you're alive, that it might still happen 100 years from now. It happened with Bartram. It happened with so many other writers. So it's something we don't want to forget about because it brings out the best in who we are.